You're on, go ahead.
Thank you. Call the meeting to order. Jen, you want to take roll call, please?
Commissioner Waldner.
Obviously, I was not here last week. I was a little busy, but I am here tonight.
Present. Commissioner Thel.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner
I'm looking at
Morgan.
hurricane here.
Mayor Danner.
Here, sorry. We have the agenda in front of us.
Make motion we approve agenda.
Second?
We got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. See, there's nothing under appearance and acknowledgement. Anybody want to remove anything from the consent calendar?
If there's not any actions by anyone, I move the motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Move down into unfinished business. 5:30 p.m. Public hearing ordinance number 1612. Amend Appendix B zoning, HB principal permit use. Chad, do you want to
Yes,
talk
thank,
on this
yes,
one,
thank
please?
you. I can say a few things, Mr. Mayor and Commission. Included in the agenda packet is a notice for the public hearing for this item, and then in the actual proposed ordinance itself. And maybe to back up a bit, this is a proposed change to the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission in their previous meeting had taken this under advisement. There was a request from an adjacent or a landowner and some local contractors to consider adding a use to the highway business zone for a meat market, and I'll elaborate on that in a moment. And so that was initially heard by the Planning Commission. They took it under advisement, and then the following meeting they had added it in their agenda to make that recommendation to the commission. So they had their hearing, they had a published hearing, took testimony from parties and the public, and they made a recommendation to approve to the commission that this be approved for the highway business district. And then pursuant to after that Tuesday meeting, the city commission acknowledged first reading of this, where they had made first reading basically of this. And so now this is the second part of the change to the zoning ordinance. When I call second part, I should say second hearing. There's also a hearing required before the city commission as well. So then getting to what this change is, this adds as a principal permitted use, and you can read this as well as I can, but for the benefit of the public, I'll read it. It says a meat market, retail, no killing, eviscerating, skinning, or plucking of food products on the premises. That's the proposed principal permitted use. Currently, there are similar principal permitted uses in other districts in town. Again, this is for the highway business. In the central business district, there's a similar use, and in the general business district, there's a similar use, but there's one distinction. The language, pre-existing language in those uses doesn't exclude smoking. And so smoking is not allowed in these other districts. It's allowed in this one by virtue of there not being an exception for it. So I just wanted to point out that one distinction. That was talked about at the Planning Commission some, and they made an informed decision, I would say, to proceed with the ordinance as you see here. So with that, I would be happy to try to stand by for questions, if there are any.
Generally speaking, what's the difference between the general business district and the highway business district?
The highway is supposed to be along our corridors. In general, best way to answer that would be just to look at the zoning map, and you can see the different areas. There are There are, in the general business, there are areas along the highway, and most specifically, what I'll refer to as the Highway 34 corridor through town is where the highway business is primarily located. And however, there are some general business areas also along the highway, also along the Highway 34 corridor, and the central general business. That's kind of sort of the downtown area. That's also where this use is allowed. So I don't know if I answered your question. I just kind of
Why do we have three different business districts, I guess?
The two of them, the general business and the highway business, had just been part of our ordinances for a long time, probably well into the 70s and prior. Just to cover some slightly different uses, highway business is thought of to accommodate different types of uses along the highway corridor. However, in 2009, there was an additional use or additional district carved out or described, which is called the central general business, and that was to draw some slight distinction between the general business and the central general business. The use list in those, I'll just leave it at that, and I can elaborate as necessary later if you want. The use list for the central general business and the general business are virtually the same. So yeah, those. As to why, part of the answer is it's been that way for a long time. It's always been that way, and we've added a third one to accommodate some of the unique characteristics, if you will, in the downtown area.
My grilling's almost over, but is highway business generally more restrictive than the general business district?
Depends on how you.
It's fascinating to
What you
me
mean,
that
yeah.
it would be more restrictive.
It has fewer uses, I would say, in the highway business than there are listed in the general business.
So it is more restrictive?
I would, by virtue of that, yes, I would say that would be the case. Yeah, I would say that would be the case. And maybe I will say a little bit, again, primarily for the benefit of for all parties here. Typically in zoning ordinances, there are, in each particular zone, there are uses allowed. Principal permitted uses are ones that can be allowed just as a matter of right. They don't have to come before the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustment or anyone for approval. Then also in each zone there's a list of conditional uses, and those are a list where for each particular district there's a few different things that are added in these lists that where they do have to fill out a form, come before the Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustment, and provide a site plan, provide a description of what they're doing, and then get approval. It essentially is they can do that, but they just have to check in first in case there's something that might be odd about the request. How it's been explained to me that these are provisions that are allowed in the state statute or thought of in the state statute, that you don't just want to open the door entirely to all those uses, because there may be some things that somebody may propose that may be a little bit unique or problematic to, and some of the neighbors may want to chime in, and then the Board of Adjustment has to act as a quasi judicial entity, and they have to be a judge essentially when they make that decision on the Board of Adjustment, if it's appropriate for that particular area or not.
Thank you.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, you mentioned why do we have 3 different business districts. We also have a 4th.
Oh.
It's a neighborhood business. So, yeah, I suppose at some point in time a person could look at these in a wholesale review and say, well, maybe we need to consider 3 or 2 or something, but we haven't taken that on.
I get why we have residential, commercial, industrial zoning, but to subdivide within commercial is a bit fascinating to me, frankly.
Yeah.
If I may, in my past experience, the differentiation that we had in my former position was General commercial was like your downtown area where you had, your buildings were built right up to the edge of the sidewalk. There was no parking except for on-street parking, where the highway commercial had setback requirements, had room for the display of wares, that type of stuff, and moved the buildings farther away from the right-of-way so that it didn't impede the highway traffic. And that was kind of the differentiation between the zones, and so that's something that obviously could be looked at or whatever too, but the idea was to have something where you could put displays outside, stockage of wares, that type of stuff. And so you get a mix of that along your corridors here anyway. Because some people in general commercial want to be back farther so they can have parking and that type of stuff. So it's just kind of a mix. But the highway commercial forces you to do that to some extent in the prior jurisdiction I was at. So.
Yeah. And that was one of the larger changes, because we had, in the general business prior, it was a zero setback line, and there was general business districts in business districts in different parts of town other than the downtown. So that, I guess you could, it's perspective, right, is problematic if we're putting businesses with zero setback along highways and such like that. And so that was part of the reason there was created. Central general business was separated from general business.
Makes sense.
And a key thing we didn't want to do is take away some of the rights that landowners already enjoyed as part of that zoning. Because now you start to make wholesale changes, and they've been in that district. Well, now that can get a little hairy at different times. So we try to leave the uses that are described in there as similar as we can.
You have to grandfather them all in anyway, so.
That is correct. There is, yes. It's not as if we'll retroactive it. If it changes, we'll go and say, well, you need to tear down your business. And,
It is interesting to have that many. Certainly it'd be a lot easier if it was just a little more narrow, but.
Many of the uses in all these districts, they're redundant. In other words, there's not, one doesn't exclude the other, so they're listed in multiple places, which is what I'm describing for you with this particular ordinance changes. This use, by and large, there's a slight deviation or difference between these, is now proposed to be in three of the 5 business districts, not going to be in the other 2.
Was there anybody in the audience that wanted to speak on this? We'll move into item 2. Approve second reading ordinance number 1612, amend appendix B zoning HB principal permit use.
I must have asked all the questions. Everybody's pretty quiet.
I think you raised some interesting points. It's, not something that we face on a regular basis at this time. The questions you ask are certainly mind-boggling in form.
Well, it seems like we just have restrictions on business just to prevent strip clubs from popping up. But instead of saying that, we do this.
There's a whole separate section of the ordinance for that.
Proper term is adult entertainment.
Adult board games.
Yes.
That's a separate district.
Well, any thoughts, Mayor?
The zoning sounds.
Is there anything problematic with this whatsoever? Yes, we were looking for that.
I don't believe so.
Even the intense question, Mr. Ford, did not produce any anxiety or concerns.
I don't have any concerns. And neither did the Planning Commission. They had some questions that were talked about and discussed, but ultimately they recommended approval.
So we made a motion then to move that, approve the second reading for ordinance 1612, and then, excuse me, amend appendix B zoning HB principal permitted uses.
Second. I got a motion and a second. Any further comments, discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by.
Excuse me, this is an ordinance. Can we do a roll call, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll do a roll call vote.
If there's no further questions.
Nope.
No.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Corbin?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner?
Aye.
Commissioner Fell?
Aye.
Mayor Danner?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We'll move down into the new business. Authorize mayor to sign funding agreement, South Dakota Department of Transportation, Highway Infrastructure Program for Bridge Replacement and Rehabilitation. Chad?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Commission. Included in the agenda packet is this agreement and a fact sheet and an exhibit. Is there a resolution here? No, that's, okay. That's what's included for this. This was actually originally sent to the finance office, and then we collaborated in asking, talking to the DOT about, trying to get some particulars about what this really was and so on. To cut right to the chase, what this does is this allows us to use funds, in this case just under $30,000, for working on bridges, replacement or rehab of bridges that are in poor condition, And so this is somewhat timely in that, I believe it was a week or two ago, you had talked about the Garfield Bridge. When you authorized the letting, we can use these funds to go towards our local share of that project. Our local share, it was about 150 to 160,000 per structure. So, any bit that we can get to use to offset some of our local share is a good thing. And I would recommend that we proceed with approval.
So moved.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any further comment, discussion? If not, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Go into number 2, adopt resolution number 2019-16, approve creation by Lake County of a tax increment financing district within City of Madison.
I will just say a few words if I can, please, just simply walking you through the resolution that's in front of you this evening. Lake County is considering the creation of a TIF for the development of workforce housing. Said TIF is to be located tract 1 of Miller's 5th edition, and specifically, no county may create a TIF in whole or in part within the municipality unless your governing board, said governing board of the municipality, has consented. So all you're doing this evening is consenting so that the county can proceed with the details of the TIF. If Mr. Crabtree and or Mr. Fosheim want to speak, please do.
Sure. Well, Jen, you did a nice job summarizing where we're at here today. This is a process you guys have been through a number of times, so it shouldn't take long to explain this, but basically that resolution moves us over to the county. The county heard about the project last week, was very receptive of that, and I think they understand, just like you guys do, how important housing is for the future growth here in Madison. And so they were very welcoming to that. And so that resolution moves that TIF over to those guys. Question would be, some folks might ask, why would they move that from the city over to the county? Obviously, that has to do with constitutional debt limit. Here at the city, that keeps you guys a little bit freer for some other potential projects, which are in the works, and including some things related to some water infrastructure. So that gives us some opportunity to pursue those projects when that time comes for us in the future. The county, I think, is running somewhere around a $1.5 billion valuation. Got lots of room, very supportive of this. In the end, it'll probably turn $800 or $1,000 property tax for them into a pretty fantastic development. So I think it's going to be fun to walk through that process with them. Just some background on the actual project. I've got just a little bit for you. There is, so I think you guys are fairly familiar with where this is located in the northeast corner of the city. Used to be the Wheezy land that is there. It's approximately 30 acres. There are a number of different things that are happening there that'll allow people to purchase homes ranging anywhere from $190,000 up to about $350,000. Some may ask, does that $350,000 fit for this TIF? It does not, and is not included. So those lots that would have that type of house are not included in this, and those would be the lots that are adjacent or connecting to existing homes that are there. So those are not included in the TIF that the county will see. Instead, you'll see 12 lots that'll be in that $190,000 range that are for fourplexes that are to be purchased. You'll see the 17 lots that'll be in the $350,000 range, not included in the TIF though. I'll remind everybody in that. We'll see 36 units that'll be in that $250,000 range, which would be fantastic. If you look on our MLS, you won't see a lot in that range in Madison. And if you look in places like Harrisburg, Hartford, you'll see a lot in that range. And so you'll also see some twin home units, and I think there's 4 lots that he's got set aside for that. The developer that's requesting the TIF from the county is Kelly Nielsen. And I think it's pretty fantastic that Kelly wanted to come up here and make this type of investment in our community. So you might be familiar with him. Builds a lot of homes and develops a lot of land for housing in Sioux Falls and the Sioux Falls area. So to have him excited about Madison and wanting to make this investment in Madison is really good news for us. It means that we're heading in the right direction. So I would gladly open it up if anybody has any questions related to the project or process.
Did you get any feedback from the school district?
You know, no negative feedback. I will tell you that. The school district's been pretty vocal about needing more housing in the community, so they've been supported. Dakota State University has been really supportive of this. In fact, I believe the name of this will be Cyber Estates. So there's a real focus on the folks that will be moving here to participate and work at Mad Labs to be targeted for these types of housing. So the school is held harmless in the TIF anyway. Obviously, you're pretty aware with that, but they're really supportive for housing for their own folks here, both schools.
Thank you.
We have got one right now. We've got Grand Circle, and we've got the hotel that is a work in progress.
Grand Surface, that one I was thinking about formally. So, okay, thank you.
Shaker Lane.
So it's not that we haven't done this, but my understanding is the county comes to us because, if I heard it correctly, their debt limit is higher, they can.
Did you say it's $1.5 billion?
I would actually say that's not why they're here.
Okay, then let's say.
They're here because the county is elected to do the TIF.
Okay.
Yeah.
And state statute requires that the city essentially consent to that occurring. But I don't think that they're here,
Solely
nor
for-
are we privy
for-
to because of debt
okay.
limit issues or anything like that.
Okay,
No.
thank you. I just wanted to be clear. I appreciate that.
And we have done this process where it moved over to the county
We have a couple times.
a couple times, particular to housing.
It sounds they're excited to do this and willing to do it, so.
They're very excited about it. Hopefully we can keep the momentum going. Obviously we need it. We need it pretty bad.
Momentum or the housing?
What's that? Oh, we got momentum. We need housing.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll make a motion, we adopt resolution number 2019-16, approve creation by Lake County of a tax increment financing district within the city of Madison.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further comment, discussion?
You got one out there on the floor, Roy one.
Right, if you want.
Yeah, Roy Lindsay, former mayor. I just want to say, this has been something that we've done before. The county has seen the advantage of it, because we did it on 3 other occasions here. They've also done it on the ethanol plant. And so the schools are held harmless in that. So there is definite advantage to the city and the county in doing this. So I really appreciate that you're moving forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comment? Not, well, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. We'll go into 3, set bid date, bid number 885, WWTF screw pump coating. Chad or Brad?
Yeah, I can say a few words. This is, I'll be very brief. It's related to the item that was actually on last week's agenda when Banner Associates was hired to prepare some bid documents. We're on a pretty tight timeline to get this project bid and actually constructed and completed this year within the CISO limitations of applying coatings on the screw pumps. And so we were able to work with them after last week's approval to get this request before you to start advertising. There's a 10-day minimum bid or a window that we have to advertise 2 times in the paper and so on. So this is to seek your authorizations to proceed to advertise for bids, and then we do propose to open bids on Tuesday, August 27th at 10 a.m. And I don't know, did I miss anything, Brad? Or?
Nope, you've got it.
Are these bids written by Banner?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Make a motion to set bid date for August 27th, 10 a.m. for bid number 885, wastewater treatment facility screw pump coatings.
Second. I got a motion and a second. Any further comment, discussion? If not, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Public comment?
Nothing tonight, sir.
Any announcements? Nothing under executive session, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion we adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carried. We'll